Good morning on this Sunday, November 13th, and welcome to the Georgia Gang. 4 more weeks on the campaign trail for Senator Raphael Warnock and his Republican challenger, Herschel Walker. Also, Governor Brian Kemp defeats Stacey Abrams again. What's next for the high-profile Democrat? And House Speaker David Ralston announces he's stepping down from his leadership role. Melita, Phil, Theron, and Janelle are all here. The debate and discussion begin right now.
From the Fox 5 studios, the Georgia Gang starts now.
As the polls predicted, many Georgia voters decided on a split ticket, forcing Senator Raphael Warnock and Republican Herschel Walker into a runoff and another 4 weeks on the campaign trail.
He's going to be tough to beat. He's going to be tough to beat, but let me tell you what, he got the wrong Georgia here, don't he?
Georgia voters will head to the polls one more time to decide the U.S. Senate race and possibly the balance of power once again. Herschel Walker was 200,000 votes shy of fellow Republican Governor Brian Kemp. Walker told a story to his supporters about an optimistic boy whose father gave him horse manure as a gift.
You know, Dad, as much horse manure as there is in this room, there must be a pony at the bottom of it.
Warnock waited until 2 a.m. Wednesday morning to send his supporters home with a hopeful message for the next 4 weeks.
I remain as committed to this work as I have ever been, and I look forward to continuing on that journey together over the next 6 years.
The runoff is set for December 6th. Now, Janelle, I'll start with you this week. All of the Republicans down ballot really benefited from Governor Kemp's momentum at the top of the ticket. Herschel Walker, not so much. So how does he be able to motivate his supporters to come back another time?
Okay, so I believe that this is 100% going to come down to turnout. So what we saw was that neither Warnock or Walker got 2 million votes. 200,000 people who voted for Kemp didn't vote for Walker, and 100,000 people who voted for Bruce Thompson in Labor Commissioner race didn't vote for Walker. I talked to Martha this morning, and she told me that 600 people that voted for Governor Kemp in Oconee County, which is a highly Republican area, didn't vote for Walker. Okay, so this is where what happens when you put Republicans in a position where they have to choose between their moral compass and what they believe morally and or whether or not they want to be a team player. What I think Herschel Walker has to do right now is give these Republicans that set out something to support, something to support other than himself. The issue is they don't like him. So if you can give them an agenda, put out a policy plan, what committees are you planning on working on, what are you going to do, really focus in on that. I think that will pull those people from sitting it out to coming in and saying, I'm going to vote for your agenda because I don't have to vote for the person.
Theron, Senator Warnock outspent Herschel Walker 3-1. Walker had all of those personal issues, and yet he's still standing. So what does Senator Warnock have to do to motivate Democrats to come out again?
Well, I think Senator Warnock has got to continue doing what he did on an election night. That is, give a very direct but calm sort of display of the future. And one of the things about runoffs, and I agree with Janelle, it is all about turnout. So what he's got to do now is that he's got to focus on the base, but he's also got to expand the base. So he's got to have a base plus strategy. And I think that his message has got to be about uniting Georgia. It's got to be about all Georgians coming together. He's got to inspire people. He's got to give them specifics about what he plans to do if he's reelected to the U.S. Senate. And so I think the attacks did work to a certain extent, but I think, as we talked about on the show, many Republicans said, hey, we're just going to vote for him anyway. So he's got to find an additional group of voters. He's got to build this coalition together that's not just the base, but also I think that his whole campaign has really been kind of focused on the middle. So him kind of staying in the middle is not going to be foreign to a lot of folks. Lastly, look, I think Herschel Walker did better than a lot of people thought he was going to do. I predicted that Senator Warnock was going to win without a runoff. He came this close to doing it. So while we did have a bad night, that was one of the things that I said, okay, it could have been worse. Because if Senator Warnock had a loss, oh my God, I would have probably wore all black like Melita and Janelle's day and probably would have had sunglasses on. So what Democrats have got to do now is rally behind Senator Warnock, and we got to be focused like we've never been before about making sure that he's reelected.
Phil, kudos to Insider Advantage and Matt Towery for really nailing these races in the polls, both in the governor's race and the Senate race. Who do you think has the benefit now in the runoff?
I think that, again, it's going to be very, very close. It is turnout, as we all agree. And I think that the model of the Walker campaign, and Janelle made some good points, is going to have to be all hands on deck for Republicans and independents of all stripes. And I think the fact that control of the U.S. Senate is going to be decided is another factor, because Biden, of course, is so popular. The Democrats and Warnock are never going to have Joe Biden come in here. That'd be a horrible mistake, although I hope Biden comes in anyway. But I do think that the Kemp machine now is shifting to Herschel Walker. You've got the PACs coming in. You've got, I think, Governor DeSantis is going to be coming in, who was great with suburban voters. We specifically, as Republicans, the strategy would be to do those suburban voters.
Melita, do Democrats want to see former President Donald Trump come to Georgia for Herschel Walker?
Well, I'm sure we'd welcome that. But I think this race is going to be about the kind of message that Warnock gave in his kickoff for the runoff campaign about competence and character. And also, Warnock has a strong turnout game. He did some unusual digital ads that targeted specific voters in a very creative way, more creative than many of his Senate colleagues. He did a lot of YouTube advertising. So I think Warnock is on the cutting edge of what campaigns are going to continue to look like in coming years. And Warnock is no stranger to this turnout, the runoff game, because of 2021. And so he's got a strong team in place. There are a lot of energized Democrats ready to back him up and take this to the finish line.
Janelle.
Yeah, so I want to make sure I note too that Warnock has moral issues as well. So it wasn't like these people voted against Herschel when they didn't go out and support Herschel and vote for Warnock. They didn't vote for Warnock either. So he has a lot of moral issues that he has to overcome as well. So I'm interested to see how he's going to do that and what the Walker's campaign is going to do to highlight that, you know, Warnock is just as bad as the things that you're saying about me, but here's my plan and this is what you should support.
Go ahead, Melita.
That's a false equivalency, if ever there was one. I'll put the morals of the pastor of Ebenezer Baptist Church up against the running back, the reverend versus the running back, any day.
Trying to run down his ex-wife and evicting tenants?
You got to hold pastors to a higher standard, too. There's a higher standard when you're leading a flock. So I do think that there are conversations that need to be had when it comes to him and morals.
Theron, let me ask you this, because the past 2 weeks we really saw Senator Warnock go on the attack against Herschel Walker, saying he is absolutely unfit and unqualified to be a United States Senator. Do you think Warnock should continue these attacks, or should he stick to his own record?
Yes, because what a lot of Democrats were saying after the debate, and I heard it from a lot of friends and just random people, is that they really wish that Senator Warnock would have just been a little bit more aggressive towards Herschel Walker. Now, I assume that the strategy of the senator was, hey, don't say or do anything that gives your opponent momentum. He also was making an appeal for the middle. I think the gloves are off now. I think you've got to be very, very specific about why you're different than Herschel Walker. And last thing, Janelle, you know, you weren't on the show last week, but I did say that, hey, if the second accuser came out and showed her face, you know, would Republicans, you know, still vote for him? Now, I still believe that there are some Republicans that are like really troubled by some of the things that they've heard about Herschel Walker. But I think the Warnock campaign has got to be positive, but find ways to sort of draw the contrast between your campaign and your opponent's campaign, but also be very, very specific about why you should be reelected. And I think you'll hear that from him.
Phil.
Let me get this straight. You want the campaign to be positive by Warnock, yet you're in favor of the politics of personal destruction against Herschel Walker. What kind of positivity is that? I'm for having the issues. I'm for having a contrast developed between the radical positions of Warnock, who, you know, what's all this, you know, gender identity stuff? What's all this woke garbage that Warnock now is trying to hide that he's always been in favor of? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the economy and inflation. I think we both ought to condemn the politics of personal destruction.
Well, no, well, first of all, I never used the term personal destruction. Look, the bottom line is that all the things that the campaigns are pointing out are things that Herschel Walker did.
Well, a lot of
right?
them are half truths.
But these are,
you don't know.
But guys, look, we got to call it balls and strikes, right? Herschel Walker didn't run a sort of flawless campaign. I mean, you know, he was not the best candidate, didn't have slip-ups. I mean, he said things that were not true.
So did Warnock.
No.
Yeah, I just think that the Republicans, we struggle with getting on offense. You know, we're constantly having to stay on defense because we're defending our stuff and instead of getting on offense and talking about things. But, you know, Kelvin read Warnock's book, and there are things that's in his book about weaponizing the black church in politics. And I do think that it's important to point these things out. However, at this point, I think because both of the candidates are seen as flawed candidates, we've got to narrow it down to positions and policy points.
I will say this real quick. We got to talk about jobs. We got to talk about public safety. We do have to talk about health care. And I think that Senator Warnock has been talking about that the entire campaign, contrast to what Herschel Walker has decided to talk about.
My question is, will we see a debate between the two?
I would love to have a debate between the two because I think that Senator Warnock would want to have that debate. I just don't think Herschel Walker would show up.
We'll see.
I think Herschel Walker would debate.
Okay. We're going to put a little friendly wager on it.
Okay.
All right, we will see. All right, up next, Governor Brian Kemp wins another 4 years. What's next for Stacey Abrams? We'll discuss after the break.
Have a question or comment for the Georgia Gang? Email them at georgiagang@foxtv.com.
Governor Brian Kemp easily sailed to victory over Democrat Stacey Abrams, 54 to 45%. I know you all want to weigh in here. So, Melita, where did the Abrams campaign go wrong?
Well, it's very hard to run against the power of the incumbency, particularly when the incumbent is doling out millions and millions of federal money provided by a Democratic administration and 2 Democratic senators. So she had that uphill battle. And I believe that perhaps Republicans effectively used her national celebrity, so to speak, against her. But certainly Stacey Abrams provided plans on issues which in exit polls voters favored more strongly than they necessarily showed in the polling place when voting for or against her.
Phil.
Let me look at it from 2 points of view. Number one, Brian Kemp had a great record. He had a 4-year record of opening up state government. This is a very well-run state by the Republican executive branch and legislative branch, and they contrasted issues. Kemp was very effective. You know, Abrams was sort of locking things down and against freedom while he was the freedom candidate. And secondly, I thought the Kemp campaign was very effective with its TV ads using Stacey Abrams' own words against her. That's always effective in a political campaign. The fact she said this is the worst state to live in, which is absurd. The fact that she said 107 sheriffs want to round up black people and are terrible. I mean, those were her quotes, not Kemp's, and that hurt her.
Theron, Democrats bucked the polls and actually did well across the country. So why do you think that didn't help Stacey Abrams?
Well, you know, look, a lot of Republicans were predicting this red wave across the country, so that didn't happen. So that was actually kind of a win for Democrats. But in Georgia, look, I will go ahead and say I think that Governor Kemp ran a very effective campaign. He was very disciplined. He had a message. I mean, clearly he focused on the ground game because I think you hear him say, hey, we're not going to get surprised like we did in 2020 and 2021. But you also just got to commend the campaign that Stacey Abrams ran. I mean, to come back 4 years, it was going to be an uphill battle. You're running against an incumbent. She could have easily not ran for governor, but she decided to pursue a dream of hers, and she just fell short. Now, what Democrats got to do now is walk and chew gum at the same time. So we got to focus on this race with Senator Warnock, but there are going to be many people like myself and others that are going to say, hey, we need some structural change within the Democratic Party from top to bottom. The leadership doesn't get it. Clearly, we're out of touch with Georgia voters right now as far as winning gubernatorial elections. And so we've got to make some drastic changes, and we got to expand the party. And lastly, we got to listen to why people didn't vote for Stacey Abrams, but more importantly, why didn't people vote for these qualified women and men? All this talent we had on the ticket, every single race. I mean, if you put up the talent and the qualifications of the Democrats that we put forward versus Republicans, I mean, it was a very, very fair match. And so they didn't have the structure, they didn't have the money, they didn't have the turnout. And so we got to have a very tough conversation very soon.
Janelle.
Yeah, so this is interesting. So I think the reason why Stacey Abrams could not overcome this is because she's completely disconnected from not just black men, but all men when it comes to the voting base. I mean, for one, she wore orange against the Tennessee and the Georgia gang, which I thought was silly. Even I knew not to do that. And then two, her messaging was always centered around toxic masculinity. It was this undertone, this undercurrent that if you're not supporting me, it's because I'm a woman, not because I'm not speaking to your concerns or your needs, because apparently men just can't figure out how to vote without having been told who to vote for. So I think that was a huge problem. But we've got to give Governor Kemp props too. This man knows how to campaign. He campaigns extremely well. He and Marty and the girls, they are out there doing 6 and 7 events a day. I mean, he is a hustler, and he gets into the grassroots and he connects with people. So you got to give him props and give him credit on that.
One quick note, though, I got to defend the brothers. Black men is not the reason why Stacey Abrams lost this race. All right, let me just say that.
It's white people.
Well, you can say that now. So now I'm turning my white counterpart. But it wasn't black men.
It wasn't black men, and she wore orange on the campus of an HCBU, and those were their colors on that day.
Let me ask you this. Where does she go from here, Theron? I mean, obviously, she's brilliantly smart, brilliantly talented. We don't ever discount Stacey Abrams, but where does she go from here, politically and personally?
Well, Lori, you know, you with me the night of the election. I was a little fired up. I was hot. But what I was very happy to see is her closing speech. Number one, she did acknowledge that Governor Kemp won the race. She did concede. I mean, it was a phone call. So let's not say that anymore.
I'm glad she did that this time.
Did this time. So look, I think her future is limitless. Now, as a candidate in Georgia, probably never again statewide, but her effect on the party, her commitment to voting rights, social justice issues, healthcare, she will reappear again in some type of way.
Phil?
Well, I think she's burned out as a political force in the Democratic Party. She'll probably be a voice to continue to speak out on a lot of positions. Maybe Biden will take pity, like on Keisha Lance Bottoms, and give her some job in the White House.
No, Keisha Lance earned that job. She earned that job.
Stacey Abrams will earn any job she would accept in a Biden administration. But you know, we forget that she is a New York Times best-selling author across several genres. Several of her books have been optioned for movie projects. So she has many options in front of her, and advocacy will always be a part of her life. But I think writing and the entertainment industry also beckon.
Absolutely. Well, you know, we had a record-breaking early turnout here in Georgia, but it kind of fizzled on Election Day. Phil, were you surprised? And you know what? I have to give kudos to Kathy Woolard, our panelist here on the Georgia Gang, running Fulton County elections as chairwoman of the board. Amazing job. We actually had returns on time, I think, for the first time in whenever I can remember.
And that is amazing, and I have to say that the Georgia integrity law, I think, helped passed by the Republican legislature, which took care of a lot of the problems that the Democrats used to cheat. So that was good that we had that law.
Well, I was running out of time, but I have to let one of you two on that one.
I think you're relying on tired old talking points which are no longer relevant.
Well, wrong
Phil.
again, Melita. But anyhow, they were afraid of a state takeover too. Remember, in the law, if you screw up these elections, the state will take over. I don't think Fulton County or any other county wanted that.
The state doesn't have grounds for a takeover.
But I was very happy that the state and the counties worked together.
Yes.
So shout out to Fulton, DeKalb, Cobb, all these counties. Coffee County, who has some issues, so let's hope that they don't do anything. So I think that, look, I'll compliment the Secretary of State's office and the county election boards, because we didn't have to talk about that. I mean, people got the results, and so they definitely did a good job.
Meanwhile, they're still counting in Vegas and Arizona, so good job, Georgia. Coming up, House Speaker David Ralston shocked Georgia's political world when he announced he won't run for Speaker again. We'll discuss next.
Join the discussion on the Georgia Gang Facebook page and watch past episodes on the Georgia Gang YouTube channel.
A shocking announcement from House Speaker David Ralston. He announced he'll be stepping down as Speaker, but will keep his House seat. Theron, we always refer to Speaker Ralston as your friend, and he says this decision is based on a health issue that has arisen.
Well, you know, he is my friend, Laura, and I had a chance to speak with Speaker Ralston a week before he made this announcement, and you know, he was in a good spirit and good health, and you know, we always do our sort of prediction thing, and then most of the time the speaker is right. I'll say that on television, and sometimes I'm right, but I think that, you know, his chief of staff, Spiro, put it best, and I want to read what Spiro has given me permission to say on the air, is that Speaker Ralston inherited a dumpster fire, and his replacement will receive keys to a Cadillac. And so if you look at how he governed, I mean, this is a speaker who is my friend. We probably disagree 90+% on issues, but had an open door policy, not just for his Republican caucus. He was for the rural caucus, he was for the metro caucus. Democrats, if you made sense and you actually made a point of why you wanted to get legislation passed, he sort of led the House that way. So he's going to be missed. But the good news is that he's just not running for speaker again. He will remain in his seat, so he still will be in the House. And I'll wait and see who the next speaker would be. But ultimately, just want to thank Speaker Ralston for his outstanding leadership as Speaker, but look forward to seeing him down in the Capitol really soon.
Well, Janelle, many Republicans and Democrats view Speaker Ralston as the patriarch down at the Capitol. I think that was a good way of describing him. And he personally cares for his House members, even those on the other side of the aisle. So he will be missed.
Yeah, I do know that he has a entrenched relationships on both sides of the aisle, and that is something that made him unique as a speaker. And I think anytime anyone has to step down for health reasons, it's always concerning. But I will say this, that I am interested to see who is coming up next. But I believe in meritocracy. I mean, there are new people that are coming in, so I know that the get in line mentality is always there, but I would like to see who's going to, I like to see them kind of battle it out to see who gets it.
Well, Phil, the name John Burns is being mentioned as Ralston's possible successor. Your thoughts? And what are you hearing?
Well, I've made a lot of calls to a lot of my Republican House friends, and I'm going to look in the crystal ball, and I think that Representative Barry Fleming from over in Harlem can get the job as Speaker. Why do I say that? Because Representative Sam Watson, who runs the very influential GOP rural caucus, is backing him, and you'll get South Georgia representatives in the GOP caucus. By the way, the way this works is if you get the majority of the GOP caucus, the Democrats really don't have any say as to who the Speaker of the House is going to be. You've got 101 GOP members of the caucus. And so Fleming has been working the phones like John Burns, but I am predicting that. Now, what's funny in these speaker races, and I've watched them a long time, people do lie to you as to who they, it's a secret ballot. So anyhow, just a little caveat there.
Politicians lie?
I know you're shocked with that. Shocking.
Melita.
Well, I think we all hope that Speaker Ralston has a medical team as skillful in practicing medicine for his condition as he has always been at wrangling votes and building coalitions and managing the parliamentary procedure of the House. And he has been very skillful, and I think that quote about he inherited a dumpster fire, when you remember what happened when he took over as Speaker, he certainly did, and he has built a fine Cadillac.
Yep.
All right, we'll leave it there. Back to the Fulton County grand jury investigating former President Donald Trump and others for allegedly interfering with the 2020 election. A Virginia judge has ruled former U.S. House Speaker Newt Gingrich must testify before the special grand jury. Melita.
Well, I think it's going to be a very interesting time at the Fulton County Courthouse over the next few weeks as Newt Gingrich and Rudy Giuliani and others are being forced to testify, as Governor Kemp finally gives his testimony, which was delayed until after the election, and as DA Fani Willis utilizes the stronger RICO statute that Georgia has, which exceeds even the provisions of the federal law. So I think it's going to be an attention shift to what goes on there, and I think we'll see some very interesting things come out in the coming weeks.
All right, well, breakthrough and a compromise over the Fulton County local option sales tax, or LOST. Fulton County and the 15 mayors of cities located within the county have reached an agreement on how to disperse the funds. This was not an easy negotiation, Janelle.
Yeah, but we have to give them kudos to working this out. I do understand that, you know, the county has to have the bulk of this because they, obviously every city kind of eats off of the county's resources and all of that. But I have to give a shout out to, I live in Sandy Springs, to my mayor and city council, Mayor Rusty Paul, for also negotiating, being a part of these negotiations. I know we were able to get more money than we got last time, and so I think we're right around $350 million. But and I love my city, so I think it's doing good.
All right, we'll leave it there. Coming up, winners and losers. Stay tuned.
Time now for the week's winners and losers.
I'll go first real quickly. I just want to give a shout out to Jeff Hood, who's here in the studio with us, and he's from Zaxby's and always gives us little goodies and gift certificates. So thank you, Jeff. We appreciate you.
Thank you. I'm going to use this.
Thank you. Yes. I'm going to get my Cajun Club.
All right, Janelle.
Okay, so my winner is to all the Republicans who won across the state of Georgia. I'm so proud, from the governor all the way down to the 6th district where my good friend Rich McCormick won. And then my loser this week is Biden. You know, and my loser is because he said that Democrats won because they ran stand on his policies. And I just thought that was absolutely delusional. So he's my loser for taking credit for these wins, even though he had nothing to do with it.
All right, Theron.
My winner are going to be the Democrats all across the state who ran for office, successful or unsuccessful. Definitely want to thank you all for running. And also, we had a bright spot. We picked up 2 state House seats and we picked up 1 state Senate seat. So definitely want to send congratulations to them. And then on a more somber note, the president and CEO of Jim Ellis, a place that I actually just bought my most recent Cadillac Escalade from, passed away unexpectedly, 67 years old, 20 years in the business. So definitely want to send my condolences to the Ellis
Such a part
family.
of our community, too. That's a big
Good
loss.
guy.
Yes. Phil.
Oh, that was a good winner. I have a winner, too. I didn't get a chance to talk about Speaker Ralston. He's an old friend of mine. I actually still have my 1998 Ralston for Attorney General t-shirt. But anyhow, he was a great speaker. And Veterans Day was this past Friday. I want to thank all my fellow veterans for their service. And Representative Drew Ferguson from Georgia. Let's keep an eye on him because as we speak, the Republicans thankfully are poised to take over the speakership in the House of Representatives. And I hope he gets the number 3 leadership slot. So keep an eye on Representative Drew Ferguson.
All right, we sure will. Melita.
Well, there are candidates on both sides of the aisle who ran for office in districts gerrymandered in such a way they could not possibly win. But democracy wins when there are candidates from both sides of the aisle on the ballot. So for all of those candidates, they were winners even though they may have lost because they were able to talk about their ideas. And then my loser of the week is the proponents of Buckhead City because every candidate they endorsed lost and underperformed the ticket.
Interesting. All right. Well, and a big shout out to all of the poll workers who just worked countless hours and were very pleasant and patient with all of us. So thank you to all of you. And again, a big shout out to Fulton County Board of Elections and Kathy Woolard. We'll see you again next week, everyone. Bye-bye.
The opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the panelists appearing in this program.